Good. Thank you. Welcome to our May meeting of Campaign for Liberty. Let me know if this is really too loud. It just seems incredibly loud to me. I'm Lowell Sheets, just one of the committee members on the steering committee. We're glad you're here tonight. Campaign for Liberty has been meeting in Harford County since December of 08, I guess it is. Wow, yeah. Lots of things happened in 08 and 09, like the start of the Tea Party, and actually we're going to have a little recap of that, I think, later on tonight, because the Tea Party and because conservative values are not dead. If you followed the recent elections in England, they are not dead. You're going to hear some more about that tonight, but I'll just give you a brief introduction to Campaign for Liberty following our opening prayer and pledge the flag, and Danny Lambros is going to come up and lead us in prayer. If you'll all stand for that, and then we'll follow with the pledge to the flag.
Or would you please all bow your heads? I pray for the will of God, in the name of Jesus Christ, by the power of the Holy Spirit. Forgive us, love us, and save us to thy glory and thy purpose, we pray. Let all our works be to thy glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. I like the way our actual pamphlet puts it for Campaign for Liberty. If this is your first meeting, actually let us know. Is this your first meeting? We won't embarrass anybody. Just raise your hand. Okay. Excellent. We are so glad to have you. Okay, now come up front. No, I'm just kidding. Oh boy, was I almost in trouble. I like the way this puts it. The choice, their plans for your life or the Constitution's promise to give you your life back. Campaign for Liberty was founded because America stands at a crossroads. We can continue to believe the guarantees of those currently in power, in both parties, by the way. Or we can forge a new path, reinvigorating our economy, transforming our foreign policy, and securing our civil liberties. The United States flourished when government was limited, when taxes were low, and civil liberties were respected. Far too long, we've been told that the only choice is between the lesser of two evils. Are you not sick of the lesser of two evils? The ideas found in our Constitution show us that we do not have to choose evil at all. We can take back our lives and our futures by binding the government down with the chains of the founding document. Campaign for Liberty's mission is therefore to promote and defend the great American principles of individual liberty, constitutional government, sound money, free markets, and a non-interventionist foreign policy. And we do this through means of educational and political activity. So we're glad you're here today. Thanks for bearing with me, just recapping that about what we do with Campaign for Liberty. We've got some great speakers rather. We've got some great speakers tonight. And we are going to do a little poll of everyone here. We're glad you came out. The rain didn't stop you. We're very, very happy about that. Next month's meeting it's always the fourth Tuesday. Next month is June, and the fourth Tuesday of June is the actual election day, the primary elections. Now, early voting begins, I think, on the 12th on. So there's be a lot of people who will have already voted, but it is election day eve, whatever. So there'll be a lot of people who are campaigning, who will be manning polling areas to campaign for good candidates. So at the end of tonight, we'll kind of take a little poll about whether you think we should host a meeting on the fourth Tuesday of June. It'll be one of the only times, besides if it falls on Christmas, that we've not had a meeting on the fourth Tuesday. So anyway, what we'd like to do right before we begin is just, because it is election season, and because we don't endorse any candidate per se, we're not a political organization in that regard, but I would like to have all the candidates who are running for office just stand up, please, right now. And we will go around the room, and if you would just very clearly and slowly enunciate your name and what office you are running for. No platforms, please. No, no 3-minute speeches. This is a very dangerous thing to do. I just want you to know that the bravery that we have right here now. But we'll start with Mike.
Mike Perone. I'm running for Harford County Council in District A, which is Edgewood, Joppatown, and pieces of Abingdon. And I'm also running for Harford County Republican Central Committee.
Thanks, Joe.
Actually, I'm Mike Barone. This is possible.
What's my line?
Yeah, I have good taste. I'm Joe Fleckenstein for the school board of Hartford County and for the Republican, the RCC of Hartford County as well. Central Committee.
Gotcha. Sharon.
Sharon Davis, running for Republican Central Committee.
All right. Carol?
Carol McCubbin, I'm also running for the Republican Central Committee.
Carol, I don't know why I didn't see you standing there. You are overshadowed greatly.
I'm Mike Blizzard, and I'm running for District 34A State Delegate.
Excellent, Jeff.
Jeff Gaylor, running for sheriff.
What, say that again?
Jeff Gaylor's running for sheriff.
Jeff what?
Gaylor. G-A-H-L-E-R, right?
Yes, thank you for
Okay, well, I expect a check. No, I'm just kidding. Danny.
Hey, I'm Dan Lambros. I'm running for Hartford County Council, District E. That would be Aberdeen through Churchville, and it sort of wraps around the college. If you know, you can picture a district like that.
Well, we're in Maryland. We can picture much worse.
My name is Tom Wilson. I'm running for the state senate in District 35, which is most of Cecil County and this northeastern corner of Hartford County.
Excellent.
My name is Eric Jackson. I'm running for County Council in District C, which is Bel Air and Forest Hill. And I'm also running for Republican Central Committee. Thank you.
Scott.
My name is Scott DeLorme, I'm running for Republican Central.
Christina.
She stands alone. Christina Trotta. I'm running for Republican Central Committee.
Excellent. And I'm Lowell Sheets. I'm running for my life. Okay. Yeah, let's move on, man. It is a great undertaking and a time-consuming thing, and a thing that has a lot of financial input from the candidates usually to do this, especially in small races and county races. There's not a lot of money flowing to you from any particular source, and you have to raise your own money, you have to raise your own donations, you have to raise your own volunteers. So if there's anyone here who is in the districts represented, or who just wants to say, I want to work and help X get elected to X, okay, I'm not going to use names, I'm not going to use places, because it's up to you. But you are, I hate to say it, but you are the cream of the crop. I don't hate to say it, actually, I like to say it. You're the cream of the crop. But if you don't get involved and good people don't get elected to local offices, then bad people get elected to local offices. And guess what happens when that happens? They tend to keep rising through the ranks of offices. Okay? So it all starts at the local level. All politics is local. So this is very important, who gets elected to these local offices. Incredibly important. So pick a candidate, pick a few, talk to them tonight, volunteer to help them if you can. I really, really encourage you to do it, because everyone wants to think, well, someone else will do it, right? So please get involved in that way. Our first speaker is Christina Trotta, and she's going to be talking about the Office of Economic Development. Vicki has challenged me tonight because all the speakers are only talking about 3 letters. So she's talking about the Office of Economic Development. And she's going to tell you what's going on with Hartford County, with your tax money, and with crony capitalism in Hartford County. Give Christina a hand.
Okay, you'll have to bear with me tonight. I'm normally a little more prepared, but I've been busy with walking lists. So, our topic is connecting the legislative season to the election season, which I know you've heard Vicki talking about before. Again, my name is Christina Trotta. I've given a few speeches on the Office of Economic Development. If some of you have been here repeatedly, you will have heard some of those speeches. Tonight I'll be reviewing some of those same votes again and connecting our county council votes, which is the legislative season, to the election season, and particularly the primary, which is coming up on June 24th. Now, why is it so important to connect these 2 seasons together? Well, first of all, we want to see how our elected officials are doing. We want to see how the people that are working for us are actually working out, if they're working out. Secondly, we want to see their votes, and we want to see if they're voting the right way. How are we going to do this? We're going to do this, first of all, by looking at the votes they've made, and then we're going to look at the answers to their candidate surveys. Hartford Campaign for Liberty has sent out candidate surveys to every incumbent, Republican or Democrat, and every challenger, Republican or Democrat, that is in this election season. And we made sure to, even if they didn't have an email on their ballot, we made sure to track them down, try to get an email, or get that survey in their hands. We're going to be concentrating tonight on, like I said, the Office of Economic Development, or what I like to call the Let's Make a Deal office. Show of hands, does anyone remember Monty Hall?
Yeah.
Yep. Yes? Okay, so you remember Let's Make a Deal. Door number 1 versus the box. You know, which one are you going to choose? The Office of Economic Development has a few tools in their toolbox. They have tax increment financing, which, if some of you remember, is basically using future tax gains to pay for a public or private or combination of the two, some kind of project. It started actually in California in the 1950s, and it was meant to fix urban blight areas. So if a certain neighborhood was in danger of falling apart, that neighborhood in particular would get extra money from the state or the county. The county would then, fix it up in the hopes that the increased taxes would pay the county back. That was the idea in California in the 50s. In the 70s and 80s and 90s and now on, that's changed to let's give money to the developers, to the private companies, to help their developments on, to make it juicy for them to stay in our county or develop in our county, in the hopes that their development will be profitable, and then will increase our taxes. Will increase our tax revenue. As a project becomes profitable, then theoretically the county would make their money back. The money that you paid them, they would make that money back in taxes. So that's the first tool that the Office of Economic Development has, is tax increment financing, or TIF. If you haven't heard that acronym before. Number 2, the second tool would be loans, or conditional loans, which we have a specific interest in. Traditional loans, as you all know, would come from the bank. The government gives out what we would call sweetheart loans, which would be 1.5% to 3% financing. None of us could probably get that from a bank, right? That would be at 2 years to 20 years. Then we just passed something a couple of years ago called a conditional loan. The conditional loans being no interest accrues, no payments are made on a monthly basis, and no loans are paid back. So if you get a conditional loan for 10 years...
That's not a gift. Yeah.
Right. It's a Santa Claus gift, right, Scott? At the end of 10 years, if you've met the condition of, say, staying in the state and creating another 25 jobs, then you don't have to pay back that $100,000 that the county gave you. That's a conditional loan. The third tool that the Office of Economic Development has in its toolbox is the Workforce Training Grant. And the Workforce Training Grant is basically money that the company is awarded to train its new employees. So if you're talking about a workforce training grant, that's money that specifically goes only to courses, books, employees that train, HR trainers, anything of that nature. Does not get paid back. It's a specific grant. So again, that's another giveaway or tool that goes or is specifically for the Office of Economic Development. So with these tools, then the Office of Economic Development talks to a company, okay, company B, who says, we sure would like to stay in Harford County. We've been here for 20 years, but we've got an offer from Virginia, and Virginia says that they'll give us lower taxes, better employees, a little bit of money on the side. What can you do? And that's when we get into, let's make a deal. Okay? So the Office of Economic Development goes to the state. The state says, well, we can come up with $300,000 in a conditional loan if you can come up with something from the county. The county, then the Office of Economic Development says, would you prefer, say, a $60,000 workforce training grant or a $150,000 loan at a really cheap interest rate? They make a choice, and then we pitch it to the county council. And then the county council has to, of course, vote on whether or not they're going to pass the loan or the grant. Now, of course, the county council is independent of the Office of Economic Development, and they can't be pitched or sold, right? They can't be bought. Nobody tells me what to do or say or how to vote. But, of course, when you're dealing with someone on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis, it's obviously easier to go along with whatever the county executive wants or whatever the developer who may have pitched in money to your campaign wants, or whatever that friend who's been close to you wants. So sometimes things get a little muddy. That's when we have to watch what they're voting on and what they're doing, what the county council is doing with their votes. And the first thing we're going to be watching is those TIFs, the tax increment financing. Now, we've had 2 in Harford County, which is actually a lot for kind of a rural county that we are right now. The first was Beech Tree Estates in 2010. Does anyone remember Beech Tree Estates?
Yeah, what a
I think
dog.
we've got some,
That project was a total dog.
yeah, we've got some old timers here that remember that. Beech Tree Estates was actually a housing development that was fronted by Clark Turner, who was a friend of David Craig's, David Craig being our CE, our executive. And we ended up giving $10 million in a TIF to Beech Tree Estates for them to develop that land. Now, it got a ton of attention in the media for it being Harford County. They had a lot of people show up at the public meeting. I believe Campaign for Liberty at that time picked it up. It got in the Baltimore Sun, it got in the Aegis, it was in the Dagger. But after all of that publicity, only one person voted against Beech Tree Estates, and that was Chad Schroeds. Every other county councilman voted for Beech Tree Estates. Now, I did a public information request last year, 2013. As of 2013, 3 years later, Beech Tree Estates was listed as an underperforming loan. They call it a loan for their paperwork, but the houses were actually not selling. They weren't selling well at all. And as of 2013, the county was not being paid back fast enough in their taxes to make that $10 million back. Fast forward to just last year to the James Run TIF. You had a $23 million TIF that was projected to go just outside the development envelope. It was sold to the county council as being IT jobs, office space, and then a little bit of long-term accommodations or hotel, kind of hotel room, but more for the APG people. By the time the vote came, James Run ended up being a hotel, retail shops, and restaurants with very, very little office space because no one really wanted to pick up the office space there, and it wasn't profitable to the developers. Nevertheless, the James Run's TIF, it passed 4-3, with the only people voting no being McMahon, Schroeds, and Woods. Now, at the public hearing, you of course had a lot of supporters, but for the most part, the supporters were Dixie Construction, who were going to be the people getting the jobs there, doing the construction work, and the developers. Now, we have 5 Republicans on the council, and you'll note that only 3 of the Republicans voted no on that TIF. You'd think they would learn their lesson from Beech Tree, but that was not the case. So, here we have our first graph of the votes as a summary. The tax increment financing, starting with the blue line for TIFs, we have Guthrie at 0, Woods at 50, McMahon at 50, Slutsky at 0, and Schroeds at 100, because he voted against both of the TIFs. Now, I didn't include Boniface because he's not running, and Lasanti because she's running for House of Delegates. They both voted against, or voted for both the TIFs, so they would have a 0, but in this case, you want to know who to vote for basically for county council. Moving on to conditional loans. In this category, my focus is going to be the conditional loans basically that don't have to be paid back, since they all vote for the sweetheart loans, which are the 1.5%, 2% loans. We're going to start with Bill 1219, which was the amended charter that could create the conditional loans. In that bill, they also created the Angel Fund, which was some kind of an idealistic mess, which actually at the time they passed it, they had no paperwork to show what it was actually going to be about or how they were going to structure it. But basically it was going to link investors and small business people together, and then the government was going to throw in some money to make it sweeter, like $10,000 to $50,000 on top, and that was called the Angel Fund. So in that bill, 1219, you had the bill, the amendment for the conditional loans, and then the Angel Fund, which I counted as 3 separate votes. In that bill, McMahon, Schroeds, and Lasanti all voted against the conditional loans portion. Kind of a little odd because after that bill, Lasanti voted for every single conditional loan, but Dion Guthrie and Chad Schroeds both voted against the Angel Fund, and then only Chad Schroeds voted no to the entire bill. And he said that was because he just couldn't stomach the conditional loans, so he voted the entire bill down. The Republicans, Woods, Boniface, and Slutsky voted yes to all of it. So. Then the actual conditional loans, I have 2 nice choices that I picked. Bizerba Label Solutions, which was deciding whether or not to move from Forest Hill to Joppa or move from Forest Hill to, say, Delaware. And they were going to hire up to 10 new people. And for that decision, they got $500,000 in state money. That was a conditional loan, not paid back. And then they got $100,000 in county money at 3%. and that was a yes from every county council person. And then in 2013, that was 2012, I'm sorry, 2013, Independent Can Company, they decided they were deciding whether or not to stay, obviously in the county. So they were going to retain the company in the county and then add another 25 new jobs. For that, they got $530,000 in state money. That was conditional, didn't have to be paid back as long as they stayed for 10 years. And then another $125,000 in county money, which was free as long as they stayed for 10 years and made the 25 new jobs. Now this one, we did get some no votes. Woods, McMahon, and Schroeds all voted no, but we had 4 yes votes, so it passed. So, to add that to the votes, there we have the conditional loans. We've got both issues side by side, Joe Woods and McMahon. Still a little squishy here on our fiscal responsibility. Guthrie, not fiscally sound, but he's a Democrat, so we kind of expect that, don't we? But what about Coach Slutsky down here on number 4? What's going on with him? He's a Republican, right?
No. Allegedly.
Allegedly, okay. Well, we've got one more category, so maybe he'll make it up. Okay. So exactly how much does training cost? We're going to get into workforce training grants now, which is my personal favorite. Workforce training grants, as I mentioned, is basically when the county gives you money to train your employees, you don't have to pay it back. This is part of the sweetheart deals as well. And how can a company spend $100,000, say, in training in a year? Well, if you're like IKEA, maybe you're asking every job interviewee to put together a chair. $100 chair times 100 people, that might work. But training grants, to my opinion, are worse than conditional loans, because at least with a conditional loan, you're forcing that company to stay here for 10 years. With a workforce training grant, once the money's spent, who knows where they're going. Now, we had 2 big workforce training votes. The first one was Smith's detection in 2012. Anyone remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
We made a big stink about that one. That was a $650,000 conditional loan from the state and a $100,000 workforce training grant from the county. And in return, now that's $750,000. It's nearing $1 million that the state gave them. It's taxpayer money. Now, in return, they threatened to move, but if they didn't move, they were going to keep their 200 jobs here and then increase by 100 jobs within 10 years. Okay? Now, these people have contracts with the government. It behooves them to stay here close to APG. They get a lot of money from the federal government. They want to stay close to APG. In addition to that, they get a lot of tax breaks from being in Edgewood, which is a
Enterprise zone.
thank you, an enterprise zone, an enterprise zone. So they threatened to move. We gave them a lot of nice conditional money and a workforce training grant, and the only person that said no to this vote was Joe Woods in District B. Fast forward to April of 2013, we have HP White. HP White was given $100,000 in a state loan, which was conditional, so it doesn't have to be paid back, and $60,000 in a workforce training grant. Only Woods and McMahon said no. Every other Republican, Democrat, every other person said yes. Even Chad Schroed said yes. So, Now we've got all three of the categories here. And it's kind of strange where we lose Schroeds on the grants, which is just about as freebie money as you can get. But again, Dion Guthrie on the left, that Democrat. Woods has potential, and no one else is running against him, so I guess Woods is your vote. McMahon in the middle, very wishy-washy on the votes. Richard Slutsky, I don't know, is he a liberal? Is he on the wrong ballot? I'm not sure. Don't know. But the second way that we can know about our elected officials is candidate surveys. Now, we sent out a candidate survey to every elected official, Republican or Democrat, and to every candidate that was running, every challenger, Republican or Democrat. Of those people, the only elected official who sent back a survey was Chad Schroeds. All the surveys that we received are on our website, harvardliberty.org, and those are in their entirety. They're not messed with at all. So, and you're going to get them in their entirety, spelling errors, all that good stuff. But I clipped the two pertinent questions for this topic so that we could look at those here today. And I have them by district, just so that we can kind of look them over. Now, this is every survey that we've received, okay? District A, running against Dion Guthrie, we have Michael Perone Jr. And the question is, will you oppose any attempt to provide a taxpayer-funded handout or subsidy to a private business entity? His answer is yes. Second question, do you agree with Harford County's ability to grant conditional loans as passed in Bill 1229 by the previous council? He says, Bill 1229 pertained to the charter amendment process, but no, Harford County should not be in the business of lending, period. So there's one choice. And again, as I mentioned, in District B, we didn't receive a candidate survey from Woods, but he is running unopposed as well. District C, we have Eric Daxon. He's running against Jim McMahon. And on the first question again, will you oppose any attempt to provide a taxpayer-funded handout? His answer was yes. Do you agree with the ability to grant conditional loans? No, I think the option to give out free taxpayer money should be repealed. You can clap. District D, we had answers from both the, as I mentioned, the incumbent and the challenger in the Republican side. So we have Chad Schroeds right here. Will you oppose an attempt to provide a taxpayer-funded handout? Yes, I oppose taxpayer giveaways and voted against both TIFs. He did, and he votes against conditional loans on the county side. However, he does vote for the workforce training grants. Do you agree with Harford County's ability to grant conditional loans? No, I voted against this bill, being the only council member to do so, which is true. And his challenger, Jonathan Grimmel, District D. Will you oppose any attempt to provide a taxpayer-funded handout or subsidy? No. There will be times when the government help will be needed to keep crucial commodities affordable during tough economic times. So when toilet paper prices get high, we may need those handouts. Just like Venezuela. Do you agree with Harford County's ability to grant conditional loans? No. He doesn't agree with conditional loans. He's in favor of true loans where the county gets a return on its investment. So I think he's a little confused because a taxpayer-funded handout or subsidy is a conditional loan. But nevertheless, both of these candidates, if you're in District D, the entire questionnaire, the entire survey is on our website. If you're in District D, I highly suggest that you go to the website, read both of them before you make a choice. They're both on there. They give very detailed answers to their questions. And then we have in District E, Dan Lambros. Will you oppose any attempt to provide a taxpayer-funded handout? Yes. Do you agree with Harford County's ability to grant conditional loans? No. That's pretty clear cut. Now, what these surveys do, they give us the opportunity to take a glance at the candidate, at what he or she believes, and what he or she would answer. But what they also do is allow us, if these people get into office, they allow us a chance to hold them accountable to these answers. So that if, for example, Mr. Lambros suddenly cozies up to the developers and starts giving out money willy-nilly, we can say, well, hold on a second, we have this on our website that you said you wouldn't do that. So it's really a good chance for us to hold them accountable to bad votes. And there's still time. The primary is June 24th. If you want to hear from one of your elected officials, I highly recommend, we have all of their information on our website. I highly recommend you contact them by phone or by email and ask them why didn't they participate in this, because this is a really good tool to find out what they think, what they believe in. Now, this is the address, the web address for the full council surveys. And when you go to the website, you can also find the Central Committee candidate surveys for some of us that are running, right? And the Liberty Votes page, which is how the county council voted on other important issues, not just these fiscal issues. So I highly recommend that you go, get informed before you vote. You have another month to be making these decisions and then telling other people. Okay? Thank you very much for your time.
We're going to move right along to our next speaker. Jeff, you only have time for questions and answers. I'm just kidding.
Okay. It's a little easier then.
I'm just kidding. Our next speaker is Mr. Jeff Gaylor. He's very well aware of what's going on with the Sheriff's Department and the purchase of a helicopter, the controversy involved therein, and the funding thereof. So, Jeff, we'll let you handle that.
Thank you very much. I just saw Dan Galuzzo, and he's outside on the phone right now. A couple months ago, Dan spoke. I don't know how many of you were here. I saw we had one new hand in the audience, but Dan spoke about the federal government and the militarization of the police. So I'm not going to touch on much of that. Everyone knows from my introduction what my vested interest is, other than being a Harford County citizen. Dan, I just gave you a shout out and you were out of the room. So, good for Dan. But back in November, the sheriff obtained 3 helicopters under the 1033, the federal 1033 program. And what that program is military surplus items that are given to law enforcement at no cost. And it's truly, they give you the piece of equipment at no cost. You cannot turn around and sell it to another. You can't take it and turn around and sell it. That's the one requirement. There's no other strings. I know that's a concern. I haven't been able to find anything with the 1033 program where it binds the state to any other, or the police department to any other commitments from the government, other than you have to pay for it, you have to maintain it, fuel it, and staff it. So that's where these helicopters came from. But is there anybody in the audience, besides maybe Dan, who knows where these 3 helicopters were before they came to Harford County? That's one of the places they were. And Montgomery. And?
It was too expensive for Montgomery.
It was too expensive for all of them, so I'll cover that in a couple of minutes. But we're going to be able to do it here, so the incumbent believes. Good idea, and why now? Can anyone tell me how our aviation needs have been? And I'm a supporter. When law enforcement, I did 28 years with the Maryland State Police, retiring as a captain, overseeing 3 counties in the field. I certainly understand the benefit of having an aviation unit when you need it. So does anyone know how Harford County's law enforcement aviation needs have been satisfied for the last 30 years? State Police. I take great pride in my 28 years. We, as Maryland citizens, we have the finest aviation unit, not in the country, not in the state, not in the country, but in the world. State Police Medevac program is worldwide recognized as the finest law enforcement medevac system that exists today. And we, every time we renew our vehicle registrations, are spending $14 million, no one vehicle registration, but cumulative, $14 million to outfit the state police with brand new state-of-the-art helicopters. And that is how our needs have been met. And if they're down, if they're out for a medevac or for some other reason the helicopter's out of service, what do we do then? Do we go without it? Pennsylvania State Police has a helicopter they're happy to send down. How about if they're both busy? Baltimore County has a helicopter they send up here. So we have state police backed up by Pennsylvania State Police backed up by Baltimore County. Can anyone tell me what the cost is to the citizens above your vehicle registration fees? What bill Harford County or Harford County Sheriff's Office gets when that helicopter flies up for a mission from state police, from Baltimore County, or from Pennsylvania? Nothing. Zero. So we got these free helicopters. Do we need them? I don't think so. I spoke to the Deputy Sheriff's Union the other night. All the candidates for sheriff spoke, and I let them know. I wouldn't have done it. The timing is wrong. Harford County may grow to the point one day where we need the helicopters assigned from the sheriff's office. But if we get to that point, I think it's way down the road. We're not at that point yet. So I made it clear to them, no way I would have obtained these helicopters at these times. So are they free? I've sent 2 PIA requests. Real quick on the responses. I lost track of myself here for a second. The sheriff gave some stats, the current sheriff gave some stats about why he needed them, and saying that the state police and Baltimore County police weren't readily available to meet their needs. So I sent a Public Information Act request to both of those departments asking for 2013 how many times they failed to respond when requested. State police turned them down twice. Why do you think that was? Weather. So the brand new state-of-the-art Maryland State Police helicopters could not fly in adverse weather. The 40-year-old 1970 Bell OH-58 that the Sheriff's Office has obtained also would not be able to fly in those circumstances. So from the weather standpoint, the state police never turned them down. They were canceled 2 other times before they actually got to the area by the requester, by the Sheriff's Office. Baltimore County Police responded back to my Public Information Act request and said they don't track the request. They don't know how many times they turned them down, but they don't think they ever did. So off of that, I wrote a Public Information Act request to the current sheriff and asked him where he's pulling his numbers from. How does he know they're not coming when they don't even know they're not coming? And they have the helicopters. Baltimore County has said they can't tell us how many times they didn't come, and state police has said twice, all but weather. So to me, that's not being unable to come. So in his return response, the sheriff, and the numbers we were looking at were 2013. Sorry, I don't have this up on the screen for you, but the sheriff in his response gave me stats from 2009 to 2012, and basically showing a 70% response rate for requests and response from the state police. His response is only inclusive of requesting the state police and the state police's ability to respond. So what 2 things do we know aren't included in this?
Pennsylvania.
Whether the other helicopters were asked for, so whether a request was accommodated or not, or whether the weather was a factor and they couldn't have responded. So this 70% is meaningless. This piece of paper is a meaningless document, meant to, in my opinion, to mislead the citizens of Harford County on why these helicopters were obtained. And as a side note, the hostage incident, everybody hear about that last week on the gentleman abducted his wife and unfortunately took her down to Cedar Park. The state police helicopter responded to that because Harford County's helicopter was not in service mechanically that day. And state police responded and did the aerial observation that was needed. And they also did the medevac after the young lady was unfortunately shot by her husband. All right, so on to the history of these helicopters. Where did they come from? Who said natural resources? Scott? Did you? Okay. I was going to give you credit. You should take credit when you're getting it. Governor Ehrlich had the Mandel Commission when he was first elected governor. I don't know if anybody remembers back that far, but the Mandel Commission was to look at overspending in state government and duplication of effort, particularly in the police department as well. And one of the recommendations out of the Mandel Commission was that the Natural Resources Police disband their aviation unit and use the state police assets instead of having their own. The NRP, Natural Resources at that time, had 3 helicopters, from the federal 1033 program, and they had one that they owned outright. So in 2005, they were forced to get rid of the 3 federal helicopters. And again, I said they can't charge anybody for them. They had to give them away. Excuse me. So they went to, well, at that time, the estimated cost for flying, one of those were for flying and 2 of those were for parts. At that time, the cost for flying that helicopter for 1 year was $650,000. Keep that figure in mind when we get down to the bottom. $200,000 of that was covered in federal money. $317,000 was in the crew benefits, personnel costs. Anybody that owns a business knows that personnel is your greatest expenditure. It's not the equipment, but it's your personnel costs with benefits. So more than half, or almost half of that was in salary and benefits. And then NRP had to find $133,000. This is in 2005, now almost a decade ago. So the decision was made under Governor Ehrlich for the first 3, and then Governor O'Malley continued that and made him sell the last one after he took over office. So it's a nonpartisan or bipartisan. Both sides felt too expensive. It was too expensive, and it was a repetition of resources. NRP was flying something that the state police could do for them and do it more safely. So Princess Anne Police Department. Anybody know Princess Anne Police Department or Princess Anne area down the shore? It's an 11-member department. They decided that they were going to be the first police department on the shore to have an aviation unit. So they picked up these 3 helicopters. Yeah, it's amazing. And they actually never flew them. They moved them around on flatbed a lot and hid them because there's an auditor who happens to work for the state police that has to track these federal assets. So, and I know the lieutenant who was doing it at the time, they moved it around. They didn't want to give it up, but they couldn't get it flying. So they moved it around the shore a little bit, hiding it for 4 years. They never flew it. But finally, some elected officials in Somerset, Wacomico, and Worcester County felt it was too expensive. It was moved on. Montgomery County picked them up. So yes, we went to Montgomery County next. The county executive and the police department, Chief Tom Manger, they were after them. They wanted to have their own aviation unit. They received 2 of them, 2 of the 3, and they were going to do a 2-year evaluation program. The program was estimated, now this is 2009, so we come from 2005 to 2009. The first 2 years of the program was estimated to cost them about $1 million, $500,000 a year. So kind of in line with what NRP was anticipating. They never flew official missions, and in 2010, the county council sent the county executive and the police chief a lengthy Public Information Act request, and after that questionnaire was submitted to them, they decided to get rid of them. Why did they get rid of them? Too expensive, duplication of effort. Scott, you had a question?
I assume that they're segregating the helicopters that they're using for parts and the one they actually fly.
Yes, yeah.
So that's,
If you don't mix them up. You don't want to take off in the wrong one. That would be a bad thing.
which one's got the Jesus nut?
I have no idea.
That's what holds the process.
Now this is the funny part, and in Montgomery County, that's a one kind of a liberal-minded area, as we know they kind of control our fate in the governor's election, along with PG and Baltimore City. 1 million people population and a very liberal mindset, and they could not afford this helicopter program. We have 1/4 of that population and more of a conservative mindset, and I think we will find ultimately this thing to be too expensive. Even though they had made a decision to disband the helicopters, anybody know what the police union down there decided to do? They wanted to get a pay enhancement package for the pilots and for the observers, $3,500 more if you were designated a pilot, and they knew they were getting rid of the helicopters. Why on earth they would push this forward makes no sense, but $1,500 for the observers. And don't think that won't happen here. Once we get it, this is another unanticipated expense that will come up, that there'll be a hazard place. State police pilots and state police paramedics get a added benefit to their pay to cover these the risk of flying in a helicopter. Not that driving a police car at 110 mile an hour chasing a felon isn't dangerous. So yes, Montgomery County decided to get rid of them. Too expensive. Where did they come? Here to Harford County. And one of my big problems with the way the incumbent went about getting them is that he did this in secret. He readily admits in his first publication, in his first news release when he got the helicopters, that he'd been looking at this from 2010 to 2013 and never told anyone. His staff worked on it, he worked on it, he did the research, but never shared it with any of the county council members to let them weigh in it until he made a decision to obtain them. Never shared it with the county executive, never shared it with the citizens for whom he works to get some input from the public on whether we need it. The claim is that they can keep the cost at $125,000 a year, and that he's going to use all asset forfeiture money to cover that $125,000 a year. So you heard what I said the other counties were anticipating paying. He's the lowest one by far, and what do we know that $125,000 does not include? Well, hazard pay, and that's part of personnel costs, which is going to be the largest chunk. They are taking 10 people, the 2 pilots that they have 2 trained pilots on the payroll, and they have taken 8 police officers off the street to be part-time observers. They're not they don't have a class right now, so they're not backfilling those positions. So that's less officers on the road serving the community of Hartford County. That's something I take serious exception with. As a homeowner, as someone with small children at home, and I want the police officer at my house, I don't want him 10,000 feet in the air, however high they fly. The asset forfeiture money, does everyone understand asset forfeiture money? Too well. To seize money, you don't have to have a criminal conviction. It's a tool that was passed, and when used properly, it's an effective tool, but you don't necessarily have to have an arrest. People are stopped all the time on I-95, and suspected drug money is scanned, and that money is seized, and they're not charged with a criminal offense. They have a right to have a hearing to try to get the money back, but a lot of that just gets forfeited to the state. My problem with what you've seen around the country, when police departments become dependent upon this kind of asset forfeiture money, and I'm not saying that is the case here. Please don't leave here saying Jeff said that, but that has happened elsewhere around the country. My thing is, you don't chase criminals. You don't chase the money, you chase criminals. And if you can seize their assets and weaken them as a criminal in the community, you've done a good thing. If you decide you need $1 million to fund a helicopter and that's what you're searching for, you're not doing the right thing. Out of that $125,000, I told you the personnel are not included in that $125,000. So when he's saying all the costs are covered by the $125,000, that is not an accurate statement. Personnel costs not included. The hangars at $600 a month or $7,200 per year. Ironically or suspiciously, one of his campaign donations was from the place who has the hangar at $1,500 campaign donation. So when I sent him the Public Information Act request asking him if this was the same entity, our incumbent's response to me, and to the citizens of Hartford County, was that has absolutely nothing to do with the sheriff's office. He wants me to contact his campaign attorney. So I'm sending him another response. What was that?
So that's a great return on investment. Like it's $7,200 for $1,500 now.
For $1,500, that's 1 year donation. So, I'm not saying, and I know, just like we see with the other elected officials, you just heard Ms. Trotter talk about the developers and stuff. I've taken money from businesses, but is there something suspicious about getting this? It is in my mind. My issues with this whole thing at this point in time and what I'm looking at one to see if we're going to come up on a year in November to see if we've stuck even close to that $125,000. But my problems with it, and I hope that the citizens' problems with it, go back to the duplication of effort. You don't need extra when you already have the most effective helicopter program in the world. No transparency in obtaining. We should expect more of our elected people, and I don't care who wins in this audience. We have a lot of candidates. They should be open with the constituents we serve, with the citizens we serve. The funding source, it can't be about chasing the money and taking the positions away from law enforcement for this without backfilling them. So that's where I stand. I have a third Public Information Act request that's crafted and ready to be sent to him, so I can follow up and give you a report back later. But that's where I stand on kind of researching this. Are there any questions?
Sir? Who's going to maintain that aircraft?
It's maintained. They have a contract through, I think it's Verizon or somebody, up in Delaware. So they fly it up there and it gets the maintenance that it needs. And they've taken the 3 down to 2. They got rid of one of the parts helicopters, Scott, so now they can only make a mistake one time. They have one for flying and one for parts.
There are inspections, especially commercial. Whether they fly or not, those inspections have to be made.
I've been contacted by pilots and helicopter pilots who have told me the $125,000 is a pipe dream, not even close to what it takes to fly a helicopter. I don't know. I'll wait my year and get my answers. Anyone else? Scott?
I have a question, but it doesn't have anything to do pertaining to the helicopter. Something that I've been thinking about, I mean, something that's very important is when you come to vote for an office that's as important as the sheriff, which is our last line of defense against overreaching government, is, God forbid, I'm sure you're familiar with the Boston
Yes.
Marathon
Bombing?
fiasco.
Investigation?
Right. God forbid something should happen here like that. I'd like to know just what you thought of the way that whole situation was handled, A, and B, what would you and your department do if you had Maryland State Police, federal law enforcement officers, and other police officers from jurisdictions that they would bring in here, when they're doing stuff like pulling people out of their cars, making them, searching them, pulling people out of their houses at gunpoint, telling them they're not allowed to be in their own home, enforcing martial law, which is really, you can't do it except in time of war.
Right, and you just summed it up. Can't do it. I mean, we would conduct an investigation in accordance with the provisions of law and the Constitution.
So you'd be against a total lockdown of the county and making everybody stay on that.
I compare it to like when we had the sniper situation going on, and thankfully, knock on wood, I was the barrack commander here in the county. They didn't come up this far, but we were prepared for them with planning. But we had plans to funnel traffic, write down tag numbers, and try to see if there was a common vehicle. I know we're going to see a video in a little bit on the checkpoint, and these things go back and forth. If they're done right, they can be done in accordance with your constitutional protections against search and seizure. But they're too often done wrong. And in Boston, there was a lot of police officers doing a lot of things wrong. People taken out of their houses. I don't care if it's a terrorist. If they come and knock on your door and say, "Can I come in and search your house?" and you say no, that's the end of it. They don't get to come in. If they have to set up a perimeter and wait for 3 weeks for everyone to come out of the house, that's up to them. But they can't come into your house. But if a police officer can't come into your house.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
If you're successful, what's your approach to the helicopters?
Am I allowed to continue on this since it's not a candidate? Yeah, I know there's a sensitive area about not being overly candidate,
Well,
but
basically, it's a question.
okay. I told the deputy sheriff's union the other night there's no way I would have done it, but now that it's here, I will get. I know not a lot of them, and who doesn't want to do what you love to do at work? If you worked at Macy's and they said you could go out and drive a race car around the mall, you're going to say, okay, cool, I'd like to do that. Who doesn't want to do what they have a passion for? So I know people put their heart into working on this helicopter, and it's more than just the incumbent who had a hand in getting it. But that doesn't mean we need it. Public safety comes first. I want to see what the true costs are after a year. If it goes past that $125,000, it's gone. It will go to the next. There'll be another department on that list where we'll pass it off to them.
Sucker.
But another sucker. And I do not believe. I will be amazed if it comes in at $125,000 a year. And something else I've committed to is that we're not. If we just make a decision to keep it, we will not keep it with task force money. We will not fund it. We have the 4th highest rate of heroin overdoses in the state. Those drug profits is the wrong word. Edit that tape. Those assets that are being seized from drug dealers are used to treatment and prosecution and arrest of furthering criminal investigations of drug dealers in our community. Well, now it's being diverted to a helicopter. So we need to redirect that. Heroin problem is horrible.
Total misuse of money.
Yes, heroin's resurfacing, and we're 4th. We are far from the 4th largest county in the state, but we have the 4th number of heroin overdoses. I feel like I'm taking up too much of my time. I like.
Go ahead.
Dan?
Well, if the helicopter that you have, it cannot respond and it's not as adequate or as functionally obsolete compared to the state of Maryland, isn't that reason enough why should we have second-rate equipment?
It's 44 years old.
When we have first-rate equipment?
Yeah.
Even if it belongs to us, it's still a dinosaur. Now, in my opinion, that should be enough. Now, number two, and this doesn't have anything to do with the helicopters, what is your feeling, briefly, because you can probably talk all day about it. I feel that it should be greatly researched, the sheriff's department taking over the entire county police, rather than having Aberdeen Police, because I believe that it is superfluous to have a chief here and a chief there and a chief over there and this painted car and that painted car. Whose district is it? The Baltimore County precinct environment seems to be a great deal more efficient. And I just think it's time that we get away from an ancient process more into a more effective, more efficient, more, what would your feeling be to take over the entire county?
Well, I would be fully supportive and be happy to pick up the policing those other areas as sheriff. I don't think it will ever happen because they have the ability to form their own police departments as municipal governments, and everyone likes their little fiefdoms. You know, that's kind of what this whole organization is built around. Government likes to go to its little kingdoms and its little fiefdoms, and no one there's an effort, I don't know if it's still much afoot, to incorporate Edgewood and have their own police department. Yes, if you have one police department policing the entire area, I think you can be more effective. Next to that, you have to have a good working relationship with all of them.
You know, Edgewood's got a lot of problems, but the smartest thing they did is not incorporate.
Not incorporate, I agree 100%.
That is brilliant for them.
And Baltimore County has none of those incorporated areas outside of Baltimore City, just Baltimore City, which they surround. But then it brings up another issue as far as when you have an appointed police chief, and I just posted an article on my Facebook today about the state police captain, who I think the world of, who was in charge of the licensing division, and he went down and tried to testify against the 281 bill last year, and the governor's people wouldn't let him speak. And he gave an affidavit. If you want to see it, it's on my Facebook page. It's an excellent piece talking about how that was passed, because they had the ability to neuter the opinion of an expert on the handgun stuff, the commander licensing division, by telling him not to talk. Because when you have an appointed police chief, you have a puppet for the elected leader. I saw, ma'am, and then.
Oh, yeah, my mother and I just moved back to this county. She's never lived here. I have, for 20 years. I don't know you. I'm not familiar with you. Tell me, don't get upset with me, but are you willing to stand for this county against the president if he decides to bring his troops in?
Yeah, that's something like Scott has talked to me about before. And God forbid we ever, and what I have said is yes, but God forbid we ever get to that point in the country. I will never send a police officer to your door to seize a gun. When we get there, our country's in revolution. Our country is done.
Well, I just stand up that the sheriffs in all the counties in the past year have that authority to keep him in.
They do.
We don't want somebody in that's not going to defend us.
If our military turned on our people, we wouldn't stand a chance. The sheriff wouldn't stand a chance.
People under you?
None of us would stand a chance. But we would do the right thing.
Okay.
But if, God forbid, this country's military, we took out the 4th largest army in the world in 72 hours. God forbid our military ever is willing to turn on its people.
Well, not just military, but police too.
Yes.
Some of them feel that way.
Yes, but yes, I will stand, especially the Second Amendment, particularly strong on that.
Okay.
And sir, and last question. I'm sorry.
You said it was 70% of calls went through with the state police or whatever.
Their thing was 70% of the responses were accommodated.
On an average, I know you can't give me exact numbers, but an average, how many a year is that? Is it 100 a year or 1,000 a year?
Great question. How many responses are there for that 70%? Well, in 2013, up through November, before the press conference, there was 18. 11 were handled by state police. 12 were handled by state police, and the other 6 were handled by Baltimore.
What year?
Wow. It was 2013.
Last year.
There were 18. If you look at the numbers here, it varies anywhere from maybe 40 to 50 a year request. So this is maybe used every 8 days. Would that be the right math? Somebody's better at math. 7. A helicopter is used every 7 to 8 days. We have now a part-time unit that can only fly during the day. That's the other qualifier. This helicopter can only fly during the day right now. They're not night certified. And
if it's 18, it's every 20 days. Yeah.
Well, no, it's 18, but some of these numbers from the previous years were up in the 40.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be here after the meeting if anybody else wants to talk. Thank you. I apologize for the time.
Thanks very much, Jeff. At this time, I just want to make a couple quick announcements. We have some, I forgot to bring my list up. I'll do it in just a moment. We've got open mic time, but we're going to let you know that this is a time where you can help us continue on, carry on. This meeting room actually costs us $250 a night. So there's a little bit sparser crowd than usual. So we expect at least 20, no, I'm just kidding. But we really do covet your donations tonight because it does help us cover the meeting room. So we're going to do something really quick, and one is to pick a drawing winner for those people who are new or brought someone new, and our prize is an extra large or any size you want to trade it for. Campaign for Liberty t-shirt. So there's one winner. So you have a 50% chance because there's only 2 tickets in here. Thanks very much. You're welcome. Last 3 numbers are 259. 259. 259 is the winner. 259. Is that you?
Yeah, give her.
She's the only one that. All right. You're not really new. All right, I'm going to throw it to you and then you give it to whoever you want, Ken. Thanks, Ken. All right, yeah, all right. Thanks, Eric. It is open mic time, but while we get ready for that, we will be passing around the things. Like I said, it's $250 a night for us to have the meeting here at Campaign for Liberty. No one gets paid from this. There's no paid staff. There's no overhead. I mean, there's people give tireless hours. Like Vicky and Al and Scott and Sylvia, and no matter what I name now, I'm just going to offend somebody from Christina to Joe to Dave to whatever. But anyway, we would love to have you participate tonight. Help us out, Michelle.
I think you need a workforce training grant.
Yeah, we. Well, what you give tonight is a conditional loan, and as long as we stay here until at least 8:45, then we get to keep the loan, and it won't be repaid. Anyway, start that one. So Sharon Beam, you're our first open mic speaker tonight. If you'd come up and Tom Wilson, you're on deck, and Carol McCubbin, you're in the hole.
Good evening, everyone. I have an announcement to make. The Republican Central Committee of Harford County is hosting a Lincoln Reagan dinner Friday evening, June 6th at Bellissimo in Bel Air from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Tickets, $50 per person. The speakers are 3 of our gubernatorial candidates, David Craig, Ron George, and Charles Lawler. That is the good news. The bad news, the tickets are almost sold. So if you'd like to get one, please see myself or Scott DeLong after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Wilson, you're up. Carol McCubbin, you're on deck. Eric Daxon, you're in the hole. It's a baseball term, people.
All right, I'm gonna try not to campaign, okay? Just listen to what you guys are talking about here. This right here, reclaiming the republic. This is something that I've been somewhat concerned about, very concerned about for a very long time. One of the issues that I'm looking at is, and like I said, it's hard not to campaign because it's something I'm very passionate about. In Maryland, we have a pretty big imbalance of power in Annapolis. I mean, are you guys happy with the way things are going in Annapolis and how they treat conservative votes? You know, and it's something that I'm looking at. You're talking about connecting the election cycle to the legislative cycle. Something that I think that we kind of need to focus on, and something that I think would be a priority. Is that we have, and just kind of joking a little bit, the Eastern Shore, and I live in Cecil County, the Eastern Shore, ever since I was about this high, has been wanting to break away from Maryland and join Delaware, always. Now we have the western area of Maryland. They want to break away, and they want to make their own thing. There's a lot of frustration in this state because of what Annapolis does, and their total disregard for what conservatives value, what liberty-minded people value. Something that I've looked at, I've been a political activist for, oh goodness, 20, 25 years or so, in different areas and different realms. Something we need to address, I think, is the imbalance of power. And there are good candidates in those areas down in Baltimore, Prince George's, Anne Arundel County that are conservative, that are extremely frustrated people. They sign up for office. They're unable to get people to come out and go door to door with them. Many cases are not able to raise enough money. I talked to one person that was down in the Prince George's area. The conservative candidate didn't even have signs up, and it's something that needs to be addressed. It would be a goal if we could take some of these conservative counties that are very, very concerned about this state, raise money. I mean, basically, if we picked 4 or 5 candidates or 4 or 5 people in that area that we wanted to support and campaign for them for 3 years, raised money for them for 3 years for all of the conservative counties, how many of you can't vote for some of those people down there, but how many of you would give $5, $10, $15 to go to their opponent's campaign if they were conservative? There are people that would do it. Well, I think a lot of people would. We need to start connecting that. I really think that we need to start connecting what we sense out here in these conservative areas and what we really look at as far as our values and start fighting the battle down there. Many times I've heard people say, you know what, I'm not ever going to support that person when, they're not in your district, but we can start going after those people in those districts. I mean, you can negotiate to a certain point, but we just don't have enough, the conservatives don't have enough weight in the negotiation table. We don't bring enough with us to the negotiation table. We need to start tipping the balance of power in the balance. We need to take the resources, the money, the manpower that is out here in these counties that are very frustrated and start targeting candidates and start targeting people and start going into some of these areas that need help. What would it do if we took somebody that was running against an individual like Raskin, Miller, any of them, and we basically put through the resources of our conservative counties $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 into their campaign? You think we could start unseating some of these people down there that are actually absolutely against what we believe in? That's what we need to start doing. We need somebody, and I'm not going to campaign, we need somebody to start putting this effort together and start doing this for 3 years. I mean, if we put together an effort and we said, these are the people that we want to unseat, these are the people that we need to start getting in here, and we start taking out some of the big boys down there that have been sitting in that seat for 10, 15 years, more, and they lose their election, what kind of message do you think that's going to be sending to them people? If he can lose his seat, I can lose my seat. And you start going down there, and now you got something at the negotiation table. You go down there and you say, I want you to think about repealing the rate tax. I want you to think about repealing this. In the back of their mind, they're going to be thinking, I don't want this guy in my backyard. I don't want this conservative effort targeting any of these guys. I think we need to take and pool our resources, organize these counties that are very frustrated, and we need to start supporting good candidates in those areas, getting people to help them out, start really fighting down in those areas. I mean, the best way to promote conservative values and liberty-minded values is a candidate that espouses them and has the money and the finances to do it and the support. We need to start changing the state. We really need to start going after some of the things that we want. Reclaiming liberty is an action, and we need to start doing it. Thank you.
All right, Carol McCubbin, you're next. Try to hold your remarks to 3 minutes or less. Carol, you're next. Eric Dixon, you're on deck. Dan, you're in the hole. You want to? Oh, yes.
Yeah. No. Good evening, everybody. Actually, I don't fall on the floor. I was going to talk about what Sharon did about the Republican Lincoln-Reagan dinner. I will only add that Scott has tickets if you're inclined to come. And because I have the mic, I want to warn you or tell you, be careful when you vote for Republican Central Committee. We do have elected officials that are putting together a slate or more, and you do not want your Central Committee controlled by an elected official. It will no longer be independent. It will do as it's told. So please be very careful.
Hey, Carol, who should they vote for?
Well, people that are in this room that are running.
You can sign the Liberty Pledge, right?
There you go. That's,
I got
yes.
it if you want them.
Yes.
They're on the back table as well as you leave.
Yeah, but please be very careful. It's a lot of nonsense that goes on. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Carol.
Carol's in a unique position to really see and hear a lot of the nonsense that goes on. So she is well within her her knowledge base to tell you that.
Hi guys, if you don't know me, my name is Eric Daxon. Happy Memorial Day weekend. I had a fantastic weekend with my family, and I just want to know if there are any veterans in here. Could you please stand up? I know we have to have veterans here.
Good
Come on.
idea. Good idea.
All right. Now I want to know something. I'm not a veteran, but how could I as a candidate and we as a group of people thank you guys for your service? Anybody? When I talk to veterans, they're worried about what's going on in DC. I have a video on YouTube. It's Eric Daxon. I can email you guys a link if you can send it out to them. But I talk about what we can do to thank our veterans. And we need to fight what's going on here. The government couldn't be as dangerous. Abraham Lincoln said that America can never be attacked from an outside. We're not going to be defeated. We're going to be defeated from within. And he named all through. Look at Thailand. They just fell. The military took them over. So I think what we can do is this Saturday, I'm inviting everybody in here over for donuts at Paradise Donuts. And then we're going to go walking. Or go door knocking. And everybody that's running should be out there door knocking, letting people know who you are. Because we can win when we're in local races. People want to see you. And if they see us, they're going to vote for us. So it'll be this Saturday, May 31st. I'm inviting you guys all to Paradise Donuts for free donuts and coffee, and then we're going on a walk. And Christina Trotta is going to make us walking list so that we can all go knock on people's doors and ask for their vote. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric. You're welcome. Dan Galuzzo.
10 o'clock, I'm sorry, 10 o'clock. Raise your hands if you can come. I know. Thanks, guys.
Cool.
Thank you. This is a rough one tonight because I'm going to tell you the truth of certain things. 1964, I was in Bangkok. I know what happened in Thailand. The military took over the government. The military put in democracy, a democratic government in Thailand. That democratic government turned into one of the most corrupt governments in Southeast Asia. They did what we're doing here. They were making profit, they were being corrupt among themselves, they were doing deals, and they weren't helping the people. So what happened was the military, with the citizenry, came in and stopped it, arrested all of them. That's what's happening now. That happened in Egypt too. You want to study your history. It's all very good to see good candidates come out, well-intentioned, and really spiritual. I mean, great vigor. You like that. I'm here to give you reality about certain things. I like what you said, Jeff. I think you're going to defend and protect the Constitution because that's what's needed. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what's happening right now. We see a lot of different things. That's why Hartford Liberty is wonderful. You're all patriots, and I love every one of you because of it. Christine said something that was really important. You couldn't distinguish whether or not a man or a woman was a Republican or just Republican in name only. You didn't know if they were Democrat leaning or whether or not they were Republicans. You didn't know who was doing what because they're playing these little games. What happens is we get here and we hear about the effects of their efforts. It's sort of like going to a doctor and say, I've got a skin rash, and he said, well, we'll put some salve on it. But you got cancer underneath. He's not going after the cause. You go to a car mechanic, and it's making a terrible sound, and he changes your oil. He treats an effect, maybe, not the cause. We're all arguing, petitioning, hopefully having people help us, and we're fighting effects. And here's the cause. The cause of Democrats. The cause are Democrats and Republicans who don't act like Republicans. The cause are people who do not look at our Constitution and our citizens. I said this before, I'm saying it again to you. The noose is tightening. 82% of all the executive orders that were signed by this president are signed on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or holiday. 82%. That means while you're talking about having fun with your kids with hot dogs and, going to the beach, this fellow is dedicating 100,000 acres in New Mexico so that they can control more land. And he did this on a weekend, on a holiday. Okay? And I'm saying to you, how do we treat this properly? Take a page out of history. It is my humble opinion. I was a field op for NSA for 5 years. Believe me, I've seen some things. It's my humble opinion that while we tried to do everything according to the Constitution and by law, I'm about to break the law with you, patriots. We tried to go to a voting cycle and get the best man, best woman forward. And we say, let's really fight for them. But in between the voting cycles, they do such damage to us, it becomes irreparable. We become burdened. Are your children better educated? Did you ever hear of anybody? They're laughing at us in different states about a rain tax. Did you ever hear anything like that? Do you know that the people in Guantanamo Bay get better care than our disabled veterans? Yeah. Do you know that illegal aliens, and they don't want to call them illegal aliens, get better health care than some of our disabled veterans? Okay, take a page out of history. This is not going to stop. And I'll tell you why it's not going to stop. Joe Biden's brother got $1 billion contract to build houses in Iraq. That's why it's not going to stop. Senator Feinstein's husband got the exclusive contract to sell all surplus post office property. It's not going to stop because Clinton, Miss Hillary, and good old Bubba, they have a good portion of the natural gas and oil delivery systems in Ukraine and Russia. Isn't that interesting? But the media won't tell you. So what chances do we have to overcome them while we're out celebrating Memorial Day and they're signing executive orders, putting stupid taxes in place, spending money foolishly on helicopters we don't need? And I submit to you this, and I'm breaking the law. I'm breaking the sedition law. You will go to a point, you will all go to a point, and it'll be soon, where you can't take it anymore. And you must band together. The reason why they treat our vets badly, and the reason why they diminish our Army, is because the military, in every historical turnover, has joined with the citizens and captured the government. It's exactly what the Egyptians did. It's exactly what the Thai did. And the only way, there's going to be some point within the next 3 to 5 years where the only way that you can come back to get democracy again is by something like that happening. And I'll tell you what's going to happen. We either take the Senate back into real Republican libertarian hands, or Miss Clinton's going to get elected again. And within that period of time, that noose is going to tighten so tight that your kids will have no future. 83% of all of the men and women that graduated from the University of Maryland last week do not have jobs. 83%. 20% of all households in this country earn no paycheck whatsoever. You think you're going to reverse that by waiting for the next voting session? I love all of you. I love my country. Something's going to happen. Prepare for it. Talk to friends that you have in the military. Talk to friends that you have in... You go to the town of Bel Air and you see police officers dressed more heavy than military men. For what? When was the last time we needed that? There's one police officer I know that has a bad back now because he's carrying around so much junk. He needs that for Bel Air. So I say to you, do the right thing, but be prepared. Talk to the military. Join with the military. It may be our only chance to reverse this stupid course we're on. God bless all of you.
Thank you.
Dan will be available if we want to talk to him afterwards.
Time for one more really quick thing, or we?
If it's super quick? Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, your time's up.
Thanks, I'm Joe Fleckenstein. In accordance with what we were talking about earlier, we have like 12 or 13 candidates here, all awesome people. All of us need help. All of us need help going door to door. We need help making phone calls. If you're an older person, guess what? You can help us make phone calls. I want 5 new names here tonight on my list of people that will help us, please. Can I get some hands, please? People that will help us go door to door or go make phone calls for us. Come on, guys. Yeah. Come on, guys. Hands up, hands up. I got some hands here, but I know you guys. I want some brand new people. You guys here, will you help us make phone calls, please? I'm trying. Please.
It doesn't
You gotta beg.
good for us to come here
Yeah.
and complain to each other about things. We have to put our passion into action, and that means signing his list and showing up.
You can make 10 or 15 phone calls.
That's 30 minutes, right? Yeah. It's 30 minutes.
Just listen. I knock on the door. I say, hi, my name's Dan Lambros. I'm running for county council in your district. I'm conservative. If you want a conservative candidate, physical conservative, morally conservative, I'm your man. If you don't vote for me. And you know what? I have had only 2 people in the 3 weeks that I've been doing this say, I don't want to talk to you. And both of those are existing sitting politicians. So I'm telling you, they want you to knock on their door. They want to hear. The whole reason I got into this, because my mother and I, 80-year-old mom, sat and listened to politicians cream crap all over us all day about how they were going to save us on our property taxes. And my mother, the minister's wife, walked out of the room and said, Danny, they're lying to us. And I said, Ma, I don't know who to vote for. So now you have a chance to enlighten a public in the dark. And I suggest that you strike carpe diem, strike while the iron's hot. Seize the day.
Thank you, Dan. Now is not the time to be shy. If we get crappy candidates, if we get crappy people elected for the next 4 years, we're basically screwed. So please, now's the time to stand up and do something. Each of you have it within you to do it. Please see me afterwards. I'll get your name, your email, your phone number.
Joe, be by the door. You can spend 30 minutes calling 10 people on a list. It's something everyone can do.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lord.
All right. I wish I could. We're already half an hour over our normal time. All right, we're going to show a brief video about a sobriety checkpoint just to give you an idea of what's going on around the country, how rights are being abrogated, and we'll just roll that right now.
Hold down the last officer, please.
Yes, sir.
How you doing tonight?
Pretty good.
What road you want to do for me?
This is fine, sir.
Do what?
This is fine.
That's fine.
Yes, sir.
Why is that fine?
Because I can hear you.
How old are you?
Is that a required question to answer?
Yes, sir, it is.
I'm 21.
Stay right there for me.
Yes, sir.
Why don't you just go right over the side, right there, right there.
Am I being detained?
Pull over to the side, right there.
Am I being detained or am I
Pull
free to
over
go?
to the side, right there. Okay, step on out.
So I'm being detained?
Well, either pull over the other side, or you can step out right here. Which do you want? Pull right over the other side and stop the vehicle.
Yes, sir.
Put it in park, shut it down. Unlock your door.
Sir, am I being detained?
Unlock your door.
Would you like me to take off my seatbelt?
Yeah. Come on out with your hands first. Talk to this gentleman here. Step on back here.
Officer A.J. Ross, are you an attorney or something? No. I'm trying to read back here. Now you hear me? Demands his ID, hasn't broken any laws, in fact, we would ask that if he hasn't broken any laws. He asked me to search my car, I told him that I don't consent to searches, please search your vehicle, if you give me consent to do so, he tells me he's going to get the canine to sniff the outside of my car. The police canine unit hits on your vehicle, the police have the right to search your car, have given themselves the right to search your car. The police get the dog to sniff the outside of my vehicle for several minutes and it does not give any alerts.
Close.
I stand there while the police let their dog crawl all over the hood of my car and scratch it up.
Security.
A false alert can be done simply by saying the ball fetch command, get it out of there. This triggers the dog to begin scratching. Notice how the dog only scratches the car when he says check here. The dog is not looking at the vehicle, the dog is following the officer's hand commands. That is how police can give themselves permission to search your car without your consent. The police told me that the dog had smelled illegal drugs on my car and that they were going to search it. I have never had any illegal substances in it whatsoever. Remember, this is a DUI checkpoint. At no point have they even asked if they've been drinking.
But he's perfectly innocent and he knows his rights. He knows what the Constitution says. We got air fresheners under the seat. Wasn't a very good alert. Did you? Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's running.
They continued to search my car for a long time and found no illegal drugs that the dog had alerted them about. I was yelled at, boxed around my car, ransacked. I gotta get turned around, but it's gonna be about the 73. All while not being detained. I broke no laws. Officer Ross told me that my car was not bad. He said that it's okay to take away constitutional rights and civil liberties for reasons of safety. He didn't even ask me if I'd been drinking. This is a DUI checkpoint. Happy 4th of July.
Welcome to America. Famous, please. Famous, please.
All right, was anybody disturbed by that? Were you horrified by that? not only were they abusing this man and denying his rights, but they knew it. They knew it, and they knew what they were doing was wrong. For anybody in this room that thinks that DUI checkpoints are unconstitutional, personally I think they are. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court of the United States disagrees. In 1990, there was a case in Michigan that brought this to the forefront, and the Supreme Court ruled that under certain circumstances, DUI checkpoints, if they do not abridge the Fourth Amendment, and if conducted properly, are done to advance the interest of public safety. It wasn't a unanimous decision by far, and it remains controversial. There are states that have checkpoint laws now that allow checkpoints, sobriety checkpoints, but some states are actually repealing them. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Fourth Amendment, let me just read it for you real quickly. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects. I would consider my car an effect. Against unreasonable searches and seizures. Those officers knew that what they were doing was unreasonable and illegal. Shall not be violated and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause. They never asked that guy if he had been drinking. I think that the problem there was the officer felt that his authority was not being respected and decided to do something about it. But upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. But in terms of what do we do in Maryland if that should happen to us, I have it on, if you were to, I've been Googling this and researching this today, and I got lots and lots and lots of conflicting information. But I now have it on good authority from Mr. Gaylor, that if you are stopped at a DUI checkpoint, you have to stop. You do not have to give your name, your address, unless you're being charged with something. You do not have to give your name, your address, your residence, or surrender your license. The checkpoint needs to be advertised. It needs to be well in advance of the checkpoint. There need to be signs that you know it's coming up. And if you turn off before the checkpoint, they cannot go after you for that. There was a legal case in Maryland where someone turned off just before a checkpoint. They were then arrested by the police for doing that, and that is now considered illegal. So if you decide to turn off before a checkpoint, that's okay. They can't come after you for that. Essentially, if you are not being charged with a crime, you do not have to roll your window down. You don't have to answer any questions. You don't have to do anything. Now, if you go to a lot of the legal websites in Maryland, a lot of them will say you should give your name, you should give your license, unless you want to start trouble. But if you want to be a real bad you-know-what, and see to it that your constitutional rights are respected, and show people that you know what your constitutional rights are, you can make an issue out of it. So anyway, just be aware, we're right in the middle of sobriety checkpoint season. We see them all over the place. Oh, the other thing is, the Supreme Court also said that in order for a sobriety checkpoint to be done constitutionally, they needed to be advertised aggressively and well in advance. According to Maryland state law, our law does not require that a week before or 2 weeks before the local paper announce the checkpoint where and when. Most jurisdictions will actually do that, and I know Bel Air has announced them, but it is not required by law. So if you should get caught up in one of these things and you want to say, hey, well, it wasn't advertised in advance, you may not be on good legal standing. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you were as appalled as I was, and happy 4th of July, folks.
Thanks, Vicky. We have two other speakers, but we're going to condense the first one. He's been very gracious about that. He is Mike Perrone. He is one of the candidates, but he's here as a speaker. I'm talking about, come on, Mike, transfer development rights. He's going to condense his 15 minutes and 5 minutes of Q&A into 5 minutes total. And so he deserves our great appreciation for that and his understanding. So please give Mike Perrone a big round.
Thanks, Lowell. All right, we'll do the speed drill here. Real quick background, what I'm going to focus on isn't so much the transfer of development rights program. It's going to be how the county purchases development rights. But just for a little bit of contextual background first. So what development rights are is kind of, they start with the concept of separating the ownership of land, the right to own land, from the right to develop land. And what happens is kind of like, independent of the zoning process, in 1982, Hartford County said, okay, land that is zoned agricultural, every 10 acres of land can give rise to 1 dwelling unit. So take your acres divided by 10, that number of dwelling units, that's how many development rights your parcel of land has. And to try to steer development into areas where it was wanted, to entice developers to go and purchase these development rights from some of these farmers and agricultural landowners, they said, okay, zoning in this area is, 30 units, but if you purchase development rights from somebody else, you can bump that up to 45. What that does is basically creates a market, if you will, for development rights. Now, just kind of conceptually, I think the way these kind of started off in the mid-1970s, the whole idea was when counties or when local governments zone land, by doing so, they pretty much create and destroy wealth. I mean, it's not really something that you can get around, but let's say that we're starting in kind of like the pure environment where there is no zoning. You have 5 acres, you have 5 acres. Right now, they're both worth the same amount of money. Government puts in its first land use master plan, and your property's in a development envelope, and your property's all of a sudden worth more, and yours is worth less. So the whole idea why this started was to basically kind of counteract that transfer of wealth and leave some wealth with property owners that were outside of the development envelope so that they had something of value that they could sell to property owners or developers in the development envelope. Okay, that was quick, but probably back to 2.5 minute mark. So what
take 10.
county
Take
government
10.
does...
Take 10.
Take your full 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, what county government does is they have a program, in Hartford County, and other governments do this too, where they buy back development rights from the property owners and retire them. And they do this in the name of farm preservation. But if you stop and think about it, the farm preservation takes place just by virtue of the fact that that market for development rights exists. The only difference is when the county's involved, they can pick and choose, we're gonna preserve your farm and your farm and your farm. They can pick and choose which farms they preserve. When government's not involved, it's left up to the market because the developer will go and say, okay, I want X number of development rights, and whoever is willing to sell him those rights it's handled through like a restriction on your deed. You basically, your title deed to your property is modified to prevent you from building after you sell your rights to that developer. Just this past month, Hartford County made offers to 5 property owners, a grand total of $3.4 million to retire 47 development rights, and that works out to about $72,000 per development right. Now, where this money comes from, let me segue into this. Any real estate transaction that takes place, we pay a 1% transfer tax to the county. Oh yeah, and then the state has its own tax, and there's recording taxes and all that kind of stuff. But just the county transfer tax by itself is a 1% tax. Half of that 1% goes into this fund to fund these transfers. So real quick, if you buy or sell a $300,000 house, 1% of that is a $300,000 house. $3,000 is 1% of that. So the buyer and the seller together, half of that $3,000, $1,500 goes into this fund. Now, what the county does to try to make this objective is instead of just, at least on the surface, making offers to whichever farmers they want to, they have a formula where they take all of the eligible properties, which are properties that are 50 acres or greater in size. They have measures for soil quality, soil saturation, proximity to land that's already preserved, how many development rights have already been used, all these factors, and they have like this scoring system, and what they say they do is they go through and they say, okay, they rank all the properties in the order of the score they received, and then they go down the list, depending on how much money they have in the pot, go down the list and start making offers. Now, this may or may not be how it works. My kind of problem is, okay, the scoring method looks very objective, but some of the measures used in the scoring method might not be so objective.
That's right.
Like when you're talking about soil quality.
That's right, that's right.
I mean, might that depend on who you hire to do the soil quality analysis? I mean, I don't know. But regardless, the whole point is if we're spending $3.4 million to pay farmers not to develop land when the whole development right transfer process without the county's involvement already controls development of land, we're being redundant and we're wasting taxpayer money doing it. Now, incidentally, of the 5 purchases that were just made within this past month by the county, one of them, because you kind of think of this as being, and I think for the most part this is a program that families that have farmed land for generations use. You know, they reach the point where they, you know, got to make a decision, do they keep the farm, do they not? So here's a way to cash out some, you know, equity, so to speak. Most of the recipients of these, farmers that are enrolled in these ag preservation programs are your family farmers. There was one, however, this Grimmel Farms LLC, which purchased a farm within the past 3 months, purchased it as an investment, and all of a sudden this property happened to be one of the 5 that was basically bought out by the county. So the guy, whoever this LLC is, buys a farm, the county pays him to not develop it, and then he goes on and he farms it. So, anyway, that's how the process works. Any questions? Greg?
You have to know if it's the family of the person who's running for county council. It's Grimmel. Grimmel.
It's the same name of the person that is running for county council. I don't know the relation, but I do know that it is the same last name. Very, very astute.
$3.4 million per year?
No, 3.4 million was this year's purchase. I'm not sure what prior years had been.
Well, I can say, just to add to the numbers, that this program has resulted in $59 million in current debt at a cost of $3.1 million in interest costs alone each and every year. Prior to this year's purchases.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
So it's a it's significant debt for the county. It's not self-funding, contrary to what the council members would tell you.
It's several $1 million every year.
Yeah, because the purchases are not, and I didn't get this far with the research, but the purchases are often paid over the course of 20 years. They're not lump sum payments. So yeah, to your point, Todd, I mean, there is interest that accrues when the payments are made over the course of time. And even if they were self-funding, this is still money that's coming out of transfer taxes that we wouldn't have to pay if they didn't have this program. So.
Excellent.
Anybody else, real quick, or turn it over to Dave? All right, well, thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Sorry for going quickly in the beginning, but
David, as you come up and get ready, this gentleman had something to share about an app that everyone should know about, and I will let him take this minute to do that. Please go ahead and do that, please.
My name is Mike Blizzard, and as I said earlier, running for we're about giving power back to people, and we've been talking about accountability tonight. We're developing an app that we're hoping that it'll be done within the next week that will come to your phone or your iPad. And basically what it does is it takes all the information that is out there for you. Anybody could research any bill, gain access to the exact bill that a delegate or a senator would be reading. And then you have to research all the senators, delegates, phone numbers, emails, just to have any kind of impact. Plus you'd have to know that this bill is coming up, maybe it's in committee. You'd have to know all of this stuff. And that's what our app does, is it brings it to your phone and it will alert you, kind of like an Amber Alert. It will ding your phone if there's an anticipated close vote on a bill coming up, maybe it's in committee. What it will do is it'll give you the preamble right there on your phone. You read the 2 paragraphs. It might say that you're not allowed to wear underwear on Wednesdays in the state of Maryland. Who cares? Go about living your life. Do what you want to do. Might be something that's important, something a violation of the Second Amendment, and you want to know more about it after reading the preamble. You can click on a link. It'll take you to the entire bill, unfettered by the media, politicians, or party. It's the same bill that the politicians will be reading. You make your determination where you stand on the bill, and then when you're ready to let somebody know, you go to the list of delegates and senators, governor, lieutenant governor, click on their name, there's their phone number to their office, there's their email. You don't even have to dial the digits, just click on the blue number, you're instantly in touch with their office. And if you don't like to talk, I'll write 2 emails for you, one for, one against. I'm not here to influence you, but I want to give you access, and I want you to be able to hold Annapolis accountable, and thank you for the time.
Thank you very, very, very much. That's actually brilliant, Mike. And what's the name of the app?
It's called Voter Power MD. It'll be available on our website. My goal is within, say, the first week of June.
Voter Power
So it's
MD.
www.mikeblizzard.com.
Okay, MikeBlizzard.com, Voter Power MD. What's that?
Is that gonna be for
Android and iPhone?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, yeah, that.
That's beyond my technical expertise.
Ladies and gentlemen, just a real quick poll. Would you like us to have a meeting in June, even though it's election day? Yes. Raise your hand. Yes, if you would definitely be here. Whether, what's that? No. Do you want to have a meeting on June 24th, regardless that it's election day? Okay. All right. We'll just take all this into consideration. Dave Pridgeon is a national treasure, and he's in our presence, and he's in our county, and he's here tonight. And he's got 15 minutes, and with your permission, I don't want him to cut it short. Is that okay with you? Because it's okay with Jerry. So if it's okay with you, please entertain one of the national treasures in the liberty movement, Dave Pridgeon.
Well, it's almost 9 o'clock, so I'm not going to do the whole talk. We can do this another month. What this whole part of the talk was about, this first part, was last Tuesday night, if you watched the election results from Kentucky and Georgia and Idaho and Pennsylvania, all that we got was a steady stream of how the Tea Party is dead. If you all watched all the different analysis last Tuesday and Wednesday, so this part of the talk was basically about what happened in those races and then looking at the accomplishments of the Tea Party, okay? We can cover this another month. Now there is an important story though that I wanted people in this room to hear. And it's the other part of the story that the mainstream media will not cover. So, you know, this was all stuff that the mainstream media was saying, like The Hill saying, bankers exhale as Tea Party power fizzles. And CNN, you know, their headline, are the grown-ups back in charge? You know, so this is what the mainstream media wants the perception to be. But I'm going to read you a story what happened 2 weeks ago in Virginia. Okay, and this is from a small newspaper down there, right? All right. May 10th, 2014. Saturday morning dawned for what should have been a great day for Virginia Congressman Eric Cantor. With the Democrats holding all 5 of Virginia's statewide offices, Cantor is arguably the top Republican. He is the majority leader in the House of Representatives and has fought his Republican opponents with the tenacity of TV's fictional Congressman Frank Underwood. Cantor's home base is Virginia's 7th Congressional District. That district covers some of the suburbs of Richmond before heading north and almost touching the suburbs of Washington. Every 2 years, each Republican district Each Republican district holds a district convention. The most important business, and sometimes the only business of the district convention, is to select the district chairman. This is an important position as the district chairman has a significant influence over the politics of the district. Eric Cantor emerged into the halls of the Richmond Hilton, located in Henrico County. He walked with a swagger of a conquering general. And why shouldn't he? This was his power base. Cantor's campaign had bought out all of the rooms in the hotel, so his challenger, conservative college professor Dave Bratt, had to plan his rally across the street from the hotel at a Honey Baked Ham store. Cantor's team bussed in delegates on tour buses who lived all across the district. The convention was severely divided. Linwood Cobb, the incumbent who was supported by Cantor, was challenged by Fred Gruber, a Tea Party favorite. The first course of business was to elect a temporary chairman for the convention. Eric Cantor's team supported Virginia delegate Manoli Lupazzi. Gruber's team nominated one candidate, Russ Moulton, who was ruled to be ineligible for the office. And I am personal friends with Russ Moulton, and I'm currently sponsoring a faculty training next month with him. The team scrambled to find a second candidate who lost the vote. As Lupazzi took the podium, it looked like Cantor and his forces would carry the day. As the vote for chairman happened, Cantor's challenger, this is for the congressional office now, so they're counting the votes for district chair, and they're going to allow the two candidates for the 7th congressional district to speak. So, as the vote for chairman happened, Cantor's challenger was given the opportunity to speak to the convention. His supporters cheered him loudly, to the surprise of the Cantor people. Bratt challenged Cantor on his dishonest ads and his refusal to debate. Then Cantor was given the opportunity to speak. Any illusions that the convention was going his way was quickly dissolved, as Cantor was loudly booed by Tea Party activists and others supporting Dave Bratt and Fred Gruber. Chants of liar and debate were heard through the large convention room. Cantor was visibly flustered and very visibly angered at the reception he received. Immediately after his speech, he stormed out. The ultimate shock came when the votes were counted. The Republican Party of Virginia uses a weighted voting system that favors counties that have larger Republican turnout. When the votes were counted, Fred Gruber had defeated Cantor's hand-picked chairman, Linwood Cobb, 675 to 630. After the convention, some Cantor supporters left gracefully, congratulating Gruber's supporters for the win. Others stormed away. And this next part will sound very familiar to people in the room. More than one was heard to threaten to pull their money from the GOP because Cantor's hand-picked chairman lost. And didn't we find that out to be the case for the Republican Central Committee in this county, that they could not stomach people that we supported winning? Now, many in the grassroots have neither forgotten nor forgiven the establishment for not supporting the conservative Republican ticket for governor, which was Ken Cuccinelli, by the way, lieutenant governor, and attorney general last year. All three lost. For Cantor, this could be nothing short of a red alert moment. The base of his power in Virginia has been cracked. Cantor's team could not turn out enough voters for his people to keep control of the 7th district. Now, on June 10th, Virginia will hold its congressional primaries. It is a live or die moment for Eric Cantor. There is no Democrat on the ballot, so the winner of the primary wins all. Dave Bratt now has huge momentum going into the primary with a base that is fired up. On June 10th, the congressional races will be the top races on the ballot. That means there will be low turnout, and get out the vote efforts will be crucial.
So what I want to point out with this is while you have this story of the mainstream press, you have this story of what's happened to Eric Cantor and the fact that Tea Party and Liberty activists have now took the district chair races in 9 out of 11 congressional districts in Virginia. Now, the Republican establishment, they can brag about Mitch McConnell winning, taking Georgia, but if the Republican establishment will only be satisfied with the old Washington way of doing business, they're going to be disappointed with the 2014 elections, no matter how many seats they win. Because the soul of this country is ready for change. They are waiting for new leadership, and it's up to us in this room to help provide that. Our fellow citizens know a Veterans Administration that allowed veterans to die is broken. Our fellow citizens know our southern border with no intent to enforce our immigration laws is broken. Our fellow citizens know the Environmental Protection Agency, with all its regulations that are hampering our economy and keeping our energy capabilities from being developed, is broken. Our fellow citizens know a Bureau of Land Management that has an unquenchable thirst to expand federal land holdings is broken. Our fellow citizens know that essentially everything that the federal government puts its hands on at this stage is broken. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, the ideas of the Tea Party are not a passing fad. Liberty is not a passing fad. Concern about our children's future is not a passing fad. The love of our Constitution by the people in this room is not a passing fad. We are not dead. The ideals of government off our backs, less taxes, and adherence to our Constitution are not dead. The ideals of liberty are not on the run. The people in this room who have done door knocking around this election know that this is the truth. They know our fellow citizens are waiting for new, real leadership that will fight for our founding principles. And that, my friends, is the true story that the mainstream media does not care to cover. Thank you.
Guys, thank you very, very much for attending. See the candidate of your choice. We will see you in July, on the 4th Tuesday of July. Please get out and vote. Vote for good candidates. Work for good candidates. Thanks for coming.